The threshold of 700. Hello, this is Chris speaking, Shores of Infinity, with a video about the Hawkins scale threshold of 700. What is this about? In the consciousness model of David Hawkins, there are several thresholds. Usually, most people are around 200. Then the next big step is 400, then 500, then 600, then 700, and we won't talk about 800 plus yet, because 700 is already out of this world. As an analogy, the first 200 are infancy, before kindergarten. Then 200 to 400 is kindergarten. 400 to 500 elementary school. 500 to 600 high school. 600 to 700 university, work life, a life outside of the family and school, where you have to fend for yourself. Now then, what is 700 in this analogy? 700 is like to be an astronaut, go into a space shuttle and see the Earth from outer space. Float through empty space and see everything bird's view from above. How many astronauts? There are several astronauts, but how many astronauts have seen this already? So that's why it's a good analogy. Very few, and very few have ever passed beyond 700. Beyond 700, there's nothing fixed, nothing defined, nothing certain. Everything is open space, infinite. No structure and none or very few rules and laws. It's beyond imagination. We cannot imagine or think how beyond 700 is or feels like, what the experience is like. We can, if we go back to this analogy, we can see, okay, we can watch a picture, a movie from a satellite, how the Earth looks from outer space, but it's not the same as experiencing it from out there. Another analogy that just comes to my mind, I never script these videos, everything is just spontaneous. So another analogy that comes to my mind is, in evolutionary theory, all animals used to live in the ocean. And then a few animals crept out of the water onto land, and after a few generations they were able to live on the land. This is also similar. If more than 99% of all animals living in the water and just a few pioneers enter the land and make a new life and create new life forms outside of the water. That is also an analogy for beyond 700. Most spiritual teachers are somewhere between 400 and 600. Very few are actually beyond 600, and almost none are beyond 700. 700 is what Meher Baba calls full enlightenment. We have almost no records of how it feels, how the day-to-day experience is of 700 and beyond. Because words fail. It's almost impossible to put into words. But there's one book, respectively 13 books, Satprem's Diary of the Mother. The mother was the spiritual companion of Sri Aurobindo, and Sri Aurobindo was always a few steps ahead. He was already between 700 and 800 most of the time. And the mother was around 700, and later in her life, the last few years, she went beyond 700. I'm talking about continuous stretches of time. It's easy to have a look into beyond 700 if you're in the 600s, but to continuously stay there is very difficult. So in 1962, the mother withdrew a little bit, and that's when she entered the 700s. It took quite a few years to consolidate this. And these last 13 years of her life are reflected in her diaries. She didn't write them, but she had a confidant, a trusted person with her, Satprem, who came to visit her regularly and just wrote everything down, she said, and published some of it. Another example is C.G. Jung's Red Book. So if you read C.G. Jung's Red Book or The Mother's Diary, called The Agenda, you can see that most people didn't understand them, and they knew it. C.G. Jung was even a little bit afraid that he would just be labeled totally nuts. The mother wasn't afraid, but she knew that most of the disciples in the ashram didn't understand the word she was saying. So to be beyond 700 is a weird state because you're totally alone out there. As long as Sri Aurobindo was there, they were two. But once the mother was alone, she was alone. Sri Aurobindo's original aim in Pondicherry was to start an ashram with people beyond 600. It didn't work. All kinds of people came. And Sri Aurobindo and the mother did their level best to avoid creating a religion. They tried not to create a religion. Because religion is structure. What you don't need in spirituality is structure. In Spardynamics terms, religions are blue. Orange and green can also be like a religion, yeah? But mostly it's blue, or it's definitely first tier. So you don't want any religion because the journey is about second and third tier. So why am I making a video here about 700 plus, about third tier, when almost no one has had this experience anyway? I do it because people are looking for it. They're looking for a state that is beyond description and imagination. They call it enlightenment, but they have no idea what it is and how it feels like. They just think, okay, that sounds cool, I want it. So the question you have to ask yourself here is, why do you want it? And who wants it? Who is this I who wants it?
I want it, my precious.